Okay, that material there, at first I started telling people it's the horsespring formation. You know, relatively recent, 20 million years old, landlocked lakes that deposited stuff. Okay. Then I realized it's virgin limestone, 300 million years, as the ocean was going away. Okay, now that's the Kaibab limestone at, 300 million years and older. Okay, now I'm using this roadside geology book, and it turns out this is horsespring formation, relatively new, at 15 or so million years old. According to the book, that's what it is. So the virgin limestone, which would be on the top of that, riding on the back of the Kaibab limestone, apparently got washed away or whatever. But that, it turns out, is plain old horsespring formation. Now, if you look at that, you'll see there's horsespring of Anniversary Mine area, the same stuff, and it does look similar. See? That looks similar to that. Okay, I'm going to do a power burst straight over from the highway to Bowl of Fire. Just in a straight line into there, and then up into that big ravine that you see. I've been up there before. So I'll hike more or less in a straight line to it and then back. I don't have that much time. A little bit of what's here. There's the Muddy Mountains in the background. Another section of Bowl and Fire that's visible through another cut. Anniversary Mine area. This is all horsespring formation. Here's the highway. There's horsespring formation. Here's the talus slope behind me. There's a bike rider. It's Sunday, there's a ton of bikes. That's that reddish area is Muddy Creek formation, or excuse me, thumb member of horsespring formation. Okay, here I go. See, this way any pictures or videos has some context. Okay, Rainbow Gardens formation speech. Rainbow Gardens conglomerate formation is not Rainbow Gardens recreational area that you're thinking of. It's two different things, although this stuff is in that area. So anyway, this was the first stuff that washed down upon the existing landscape, which was mown copy and sandstone that had been being eroded and was sitting there for millions of years. And then this stuff came washing down on it. This was the very first thing to wash down of the horsespring formation. This is called the base or basal layer of the horsespring formation. But see the material? It's very common. Limestone and a mix of sand and gravel. Big limestone chunks, sometimes real big. Okay, so where did it come from? It came from right there. It washed down from that area. So before this area, during the extension, got pulled apart and blocks of material tilted up. that this area would be on the slope, a big slope going into a basin. A big slope with the stuff coming from there. That's it for that one. I like taking the back ways like I'm doing because you rarely see footsteps and you can find stuff, discover stuff. If you're just walking along on a trail, you can't do that. But see, this Moncopian stuff was tidal flats with stuff washing down into it during the Carnian rain event. So this stuff here is almost 300 million years. The Rainbow Gardens is only 20 million years. But that's what this was, tidal flats, with stuff being washed into shallow water that sometimes it dried up, other times the sea inundated it, and back and forth and back and forth. There's Bowl of Fire. I'm about a third of the way. A little bit further. This Moncopi, it looks all mushy and muddy. Actually, if you dig down, it is rock. It looks mushy and muddy, which it is because it's been exposed to water and air. But anyway, the Carnian floods that were washing material down into these tidal flats and stuff, there it is. There's that gravel stone from the floods. Petrified wood will be in it if the gravel is big. If you walk up to it and it's fine sand, no petrified wood. Why? Because there wasn't enough energy in the flood to wash trees down. This stuff that washed down came from that direction in the east. And some of the floods would wash stuff down from hundreds of miles away. This is finer sand, so there wouldn't be petrified wood in it. I mean, there could be. It's not that I care about the petrified wood, it's analyzing what it is. There's some more over there, so I'll cut over and go along the flank of that just to inspect it. Also, when I first did that video of where I was going to start out and I was going to go straight as an arrow, straight across to the ravine, there's the ravine. Okay, but this just shows that it's not like it appears, that once you're out there, the distances are vast and the landscape is not like what you think. Like you just pictured I'd be walking across a meadow. No, it's not like that. And you can get lost. And so one thing I do is I look back. I look back because when I'm headed back, possibly getting dark or in the dark, sometimes you forget. You can't tell by the landscape. You go left or right, you come out a mile or two from the vehicle. So that's one good trick I eventually sunk in, to keep looking back so that you recognize it on the way back. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I hope I have enough time. Now that ravine, see that one? Don't be fooled by that one. You can't get up in there. It's this one. See, I'm over by that next ridge of gravel, and see there you've got gravel and cobbles, and so this was a high energy flood, and so there you have a very decomposed petrified tree trunk, whatever you want to call it, right at 230 million years. See the gravel? High energy flood. In other words, this area was a vast alluvial plain of outwash. And picture like hundreds of those rivers, north to south for hundreds of miles, washing out. That's what the setting was. I know it because I read about it. I'm not the god of geology. I go by what I study and by hiking and seeing it. There's possibly some wood. So picture rivers flooding down into an area that would have looked like Mississippi, Alabama, like that, from the highlands in towards the east. I'm getting closer. It may be too far for me to go all the way in and all the way back out before dark. But anyway, I'm in. See, this red is Moenkopi. It was the existing landscape when the Rainbow Gardens up there. See it up there? When it washed down. So therefore I know what that is. See that sandstone gravel? That's the same Carnian gravel flood event that I've just been filming. I haven't been up there, but I know what it is because of its location. It's in the Moenkopi Chinle. There's the goal. I've come about 2 miles, but you know, anyway, you're starting to get a feel of how vast the distances are when you're actually here. It's not like what you see on Google Earth. Anyway, I'll look back. The van would be a little sparkle there, way off in the distance. So see, I've come a long way. There's another ridge of sandstone type stuff. There's Bowl of Fire. The ravine I'm headed to is off over there. I think I'll go down over here and then work right and follow the ravine to the right. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Okay, here's a good one. You keep hearing the braided river system wash this stuff down, like that sand and gravel with the petrified stuff in it. Okay, it rained yesterday, so you see this wash? That would be considered a tiny braided river system. See? You're looking at it. Except picture that this was 2,000 miles long. Okay, that there was hundreds of these big rivers washing this stuff out, but that's, you're looking at, that's what a braided river system is. Just multiply it times 1,000,000 times, and then it makes sense. Now, there's the goal, by the way. I forgot to point that out. That false ravine is kind of hidden there, but that's the one. I just did the clip saying there's the goal with me walking up that red wash. But anyway, here's this. Carnian gravels. So I'm going to walk up to it and inspect it because it looks so cool. See, there you go. Petrified wood. As a matter of fact, you can see it's a log. See there? That's a decomposed log. Petrified wood breaks up like chalk. And the petrified wood in this area is not the collectible type. But see? That tree washed down possibly from 100 miles inland 230 million years ago. See, there's an old one that's almost all gone. And see, these were violent floods. See the underwater crossbedding, just like the sand dunes did, it also did it underwater. Just some colors along the way. It's just what you think. Volcanic ash mixed in with mud, crap like that. Chinley. Also, I should mention, when this stuff was laid down, all the stuff as I hike along, the Permian extinction had just occurred. There was almost no life left. Everything was pretty barren. I'm coming up on it, but you know how it is when you go in the mountains, that once you get into them, you can't see them. So I may climb up there and do a video before I go in, but I do think I'm going to make it. I already know that I'll see, I think, 2 hikers pretty soon. How do I know? Because there's tracks and they head in, but there's no track showing that they have come out. So I know I'll meet some people. I have waited, by the way, and did a kind of a grunt to scare people. I have done that. I think I hear them. Here they come. Anyway, they were very nice. A mix, there was a couple of male adults and the rest were females. A couple of them, you know, in their 20s, but they were very nice. Now, coming up to the ravine, at first you think you can't get in, but actually you can just climb right up easily and walk back in. They went somewhere else called the raven's nest by climbing up or something, but I don't care about doing that. I just want to go back into the ravine. And I did tell them that if there was a hiding spot, I was going to sit and then grunt. But they were real nice, real nice. I forgot to film the walls. I mean, it's massive. It's almost like up at Zion. And I did find an arrowhead right here, a really old arrowhead. You could hardly even make out what it was, but you know, I've got to find it. You know, it's somewhere in the house. Some standing water. That's why I came up today. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but it rained pretty good yesterday. And so that's when to come up to these places where there's tanks of water, because when they're all dried up and there's nothing there, the hike just simply isn't as interesting. Also asked them, did they drive up on the old wash and then park and walk in? They said no, they also walked over from the highway. But anyway, you notice the distances in the hiking out in the desert. That's somebody, you know, they see the pictures of the bowl of fire, and I go, well, I just parked. I just walked right over from the highway. You know, but when they get out there, if they're not experienced desert hikers, They can get into trouble and fast. The distances are vast and a lot of dangers. You know, a lot of people don't do hikes more than a half a mile or a mile, and they consider that a big deal. But to hike in miles and then hike back miles, they have to be prepared. A lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people just walk along on established trails. I generally don't do that. If it has established trails, I generally don't go there. I mean, I will. It depends on what it is. But anyway, you get the drift. You can really get into trouble out here. You know, if you have a medical problem, sprain your ankle, or if my heart explodes or something like that, I mean, there's no getting out of here. Okay, I'm going to stroll up over those rocks and up into the ravine, but I want to show this. Okay, now this is Aztec sandstone, 180 million years old. Okay, so what's that? Okay, that surface was there. Like I keep saying, this is Moenkopi. I think this is Cayanata. That this was the surface upon which the sand started blowing onto it. So this was here first, and that blew in on it. That's what it sits on. I'm pretty sure it's Cayanata, but that was the existing surface. And remember, this surface here, millions of years of it had washed away before the stuff started washing down on top of it. Well, the sand started coming on top of it. Some of it blown and some of it was water affected. See, this is a sandstone, but I want to show this. That you see those ripples? Those aren't from wind. That is from water. So all the sand dunes, people picture them as just dry sand. Well, they weren't. There was sand dunes, but there was also water. Anyway, it wasn't bad. It's not bad at all. Anyway, when hiking alone, don't think I'm not watching my step. I am. If you do a small fall, break a rib or two, or you put your hand on a rock or whatever for leverage and the rock shifts and traps you, that's why that one guy had to cut his arm off with a pocket knife. And so they wouldn't find me. I'd be dead of hypothermia before they come in and got me. So every single step I take, I'm unusually cautious to not slip, don't trip, don't fall. I am cautious. I'm just up into the ravine, and this area would be heavy with Indian activity. They didn't live here, they lived down by the river, but this would be a hunting spot. The Indian activity is where they lived next to the water and where they hunted. And where they hunted, they did not chase animals across a field. They ambushed them in traps, like ravines, like this one. A little bit further in, about 100 feet further. But anyway, the ravines have water. That's because the water rushes down through there and gets trapped in these tanks. Also, there's shade, so the animals will come to the ravines for both water and shade. And where the animals were, the Indians followed. A pretty good sized tank. The Indians wouldn't come up here to hunt after rains, because after a rain, these pools of water, they're everywhere. The animals have no need to come here. But after a dry spell, the animals are forced to come here. So I'll see if I can go up and around, but I'm not going to wade through the water. I'm not at the end yet. I want to show the effect the helicopters have. Sometimes it's constant. What they're doing is they're going back and forth to the Grand Canyon. See? Let's see, way up there at the end, that's the end. It has a pool of water, and you can climb if you want to take your chances. You can climb, but you know, depending on how stickery these bushes are, I may not even bother to go all the way to the end. After all, it's right there. I've done it before, you know. I'll call it good here. I don't want to climb up there. I've been up there anyway. Got good pictures of it. But anyway, these are killer bees, Africanized bees. And people think the danger is like, I brush by, I squash one. Well, that might trigger something. The danger is if you're near the hive. That's where the people get killed. So when you hear about people getting killed, it's because they're removing or they're spraying the hive. So that's really what it is. If they feel the hive is threatened, it makes them go berserk. Also, if I go back up and struggle through the bushes and stuff to the end, which is maybe 100 more yards, then that takes away from time to explore on the way back, because I like to explore when hiking across desert, and also when I'm driving back I stop and explore stuff. So if I do that, it will burn up time for nothing. Anyway, see that a conglomerate up there? It's got to fall sometime. It has to fall sometime. Any of this stuff. So you are kind of taking your chances. You know, there's just no other way to say it. You're taking your chances, you know. I mean, what, we sit home in an army tank all day, you know, to be safe. A lot of people say, well, you can't hike alone. Don't hike alone. You know, I mean, for Pete's sake. I think I hear more people working their way up. I've been up here after daybreak, and, you know, I was the only one, and it's great. Does it spoil it if other people have either been there or are coming up or whatever? Maybe a little, but it's fun interacting and talking to the people too. And it's a Sunday, so the best time to do hikes like this are in the middle of the week and start early. I'm not sure if I hear people or not. Let me say a word about flash floods. Okay, people go, well, I've been up there before, you know, anywhere, Zion, and they go, there's ledges and all kinds of stuff to get out of the way, and that's true. And that's where they find most of the bodies, is because once the water starts flowing, it can keep flowing for days or 10, 12 hours, and you can't work your way down the way you come up. So they go up on the ledges, and that's where they find them, you know, dead of hypothermia. Happens in Zion all the time. Yeah, people. A neat thing to look for and find in the sandstone, which of course was sand dunes, are oases. The oases that were down in the troughs, down in between all the sand dunes. That's where the animals were, and the dinosaurs that were starting up. That's where they hunted along. So this isn't a good example of it, but the oases will look like layers maybe 2 or 3 feet thick that are dark gray, and you can tell what they are. And they're very paper thin, crumbly layers. And so when you see that, when you're in the sandstone, that's what that is. That was an oasis of standing water with things living next to it and in it. I haven't seen any here, but up at Valley of Fire, there's a real good one across from Mouse's Tank, as a matter of fact. If you know where Mouse's Tank is, where you park, it's on the other side of the highway. It's right there in full view. And there are dinosaur tracks there. See, here's some water-affected sandstone that was either washed down or affected by water in some way. This isn't a sand dune per se. It's water affected, but that doesn't mean it was an oasis. The oases will specifically have a dark layer, a few inches or a few feet, a dark layer of papery thin laminations, crumbly. Oasis has to be, you know, long-standing water for the animals to develop. These are good-sized ripples. They're about 6 inches. 6 inches across from crest to crest. So it was water affected. Just to get the point across, everything was not just dry sand dunes. I mean, there was monsoons, there was floods. The sand dunes would get wet and also collapse and flow down into the lower part. There was all kinds of stuff taking place. There was wet events taking place in the sand dunes. So I'm leaving the ravine, and all along here in these washes, that would be prime arrowhead material, because you're right up next to where they would hang out to trap the animals back in the canyons, to ambush them. And I did find an arrowhead right here, right where I'm standing walking along, but it's hard to walk along and look at every single rock to, you know, I mean, they either have to jump out at you or not. So one time you can walk right past it, and the next time you find it. This is the Moenkopi, where I walked across those muddy humps and muddy fields. But that's just because they were exposed to, you know, to rain and to the air for millions of years. I absolutely assure you it is rock below the surface. Over at Pinto, you have the tilted limestone. Like, you picture you're standing on Redstone looking down Pinto Valley, and over to the side you have the tilted up limestone, Kaibab limestone. And then you work your way across, and you've got the Moenkopi and the various gravels, the Carnian rain event. Okay, and then you have there's the sandstone off over to the left. Okay, so where's the tilted limestone here? Why isn't it there? Okay, these layers are not tilted vertical. Therefore, the Kaibab limestone is there. It's down there. It's a few hundred feet below the ground. Now this stuff that I cross over, I'm not that sure what it is. Some kind of form of gypsum or calcite. It has the popcorn outside texture. That's what this is. But nobody has ever been able to explain what it is. See, the layers of the Moenkopi are not tilted. They're not tilted here. Therefore, the continental shelf limestone is below my feet. I don't know, 200 feet, 300 feet. So if this area, like a block of it, broke on a fault zone and tilted up at a 45-degree angle, at the tip of the tilt that was sticking up, that would be the limestone, just like Frenchman Mountain. Now in Frenchman Mountain, this stuff was there, but it got washed off its back. Okay. Now, if you're far back behind Frenchman Mountain in Rainbow Gardens area, this stuff is there. But you're walking along the edges of it as if it stood up vertically. So there you go, there's a little lesson for you. After all, this is a geology video, not a nature tour. Now I'm headed back. It's probably 3:30 or so. Now that ridge there on the left side of it, that's where I came in cross country. So this time I'm heading further down the wash, and I'm going to work around the other end of that so that I don't have to go through all that nasty mud. And also it helps me cover different territory. And so the goal is, with dusk approaching, the goal is to be in a safe spot so that no matter what happens, I'm out of the area and I'm looking in the highway in the distance. So that even if I have to go back at dark, I can just walk across to the highway. Not to be trapped up there and it's getting dark and you can't make it back. I don't have a flashlight on me. That was a mistake. That can be deadly. A small speech on the first layer to wash down of the Horsespring Formation, the Rainbow Gardens conglomerate. Anyway, the point is, I remember when I hiked in the video, I was hiking across those muddy fields of Moenkopi that are eroding away. Well, that's just what it was doing when this stuff washed down. Okay, so these gravels here from the Carnian floods 230 million years ago, they have gravel and sand, and they're pretty violent floods. They wash down trees. Okay, so now look at the size of the material in that stuff. I'll go up there and do a video of it. So now these catastrophic floods that took place at that time long ago, now imagine what it took to wash down that size of material. And it did it all of a sudden out of the blue onto the eroded landscape that was sitting there for millions of years, eroding. And out of the blue, this stuff suddenly coats the entire surface. What in the hell happened? I think it was because maybe the ice in the overthrust went away, glaciers up there. started to melt back, and so it unblocked things and all this stuff came flooding down onto the surface. Why? What's the other explanation? Why would it all of a sudden come washing across the surface? It's starting the horsespring formation of all the different layers. Why would it occur all of a sudden? Anyway, I'm up closer. Now remember, these have fallen. They've fallen from up there. But now all through this hike, I showed the sand and the gravels. And I go, oh boy, biblical floods that washed down trees from hundreds of miles away. Okay, so those were huge monsoons and big floods to get grape-sized gravel. Well then what in the hell happened to wash down this material that is big or bigger than a human head, sometimes bigger than a bread box? Okay, what the hell happened? It's not a river channel. If it was in a river channel, I could understand it. The point is, it covered the whole landscape out of the blue. See, here's some more up close. But you get my point? What happened? What happened? Just close up for reference. You know, it's limestone clasts mixed with sandstone in some cases, sandy muds, a mix. It's a mix. And then all of a sudden, this buries a landscape 100 feet thick. When the landscape had been sitting, minding its own business, doing nothing, eroding away, and then all of a sudden this happens. The same stuff 75 miles away, Valley of Fire. So you're talking thousands of square miles was suddenly coated with this. And not a gradual buildup. When you're right at the interface of where it started, it's exactly like this, right at the interface. No gradual buildup. Well, floods are starting. Here's some gravel, now here's some bigger stuff. No, just out of the blue. All of it. It is beautiful out here. And the source of this material, by the way, is, of course, the Muddy Mountains overthrust from the Keystone overthrust. Or you could call it the Sevier overthrust. But that is the source of it. Now I'm further along coming down the wash, and you got to be careful on your layers because, see, there's flood gravels, but it's not the Carnian rain event of 230 million years ago. These flood gravels are only 20 million years ago or less. So there's a big difference. See the sandstone and limestone clasts in it? But the sandstone, it has to be recent. It cannot be Moncopy because the sandstone did not exist yet. Remember, the Aztec sandstone did not start getting laid down for tens of millions of years later. Well, how do you say it? Earlier in time. In other words, it hadn't occurred yet. So that sandstone identifies it. So I walked out of the Moncopy right over there, and there's the horsespring formation. Just showing the view. This is the desert mistletoe we have. Only one bird that I know of eats the berries. To the others, they're poisonous. But my understanding is that it is not parasitic on the tree. In other words, it doesn't grow roots into the tree and kill it. My understanding is that it lives off of the dirt and detritus that flies through the air and stuff. Maybe someone can correct me on that. If it was parasitic, that would mean it would attack the tree and bleed it or eventually kill it. Now I'm back out to the dirt road that leads in here, but see, my van couldn't do it because I couldn't make it up the berm there, up or down at Anniversary Mine. But this actually is a road where people drive in, and I've hiked the whole way from Anniversary Mine. This is a ride. I know it doesn't look like it, but it's a navigable road. Now there's that mesa that I was using for identification for where the van is. So when I went in, I was way off over there. Oh, a half a mile over there, and I went around that ridge on that side. Well, now I came out on this side of it. So I'm just giving some perspective there. So now the highway is over there, and so the van would be, oh, right about there. There it is. I got the camera pointed at it. It's right about there. Is that it? Okay, this will be the last video of the hike. But anyway, about the Rainbow Gardens formation that came down over the landscape. We came from there, except there was a lot more there. Remember, that was towering way high, snow-capped. You're looking at now only remnants, but it was right there. It was right there, and that's where the material came from. The issue is this. Okay, you've got this area where I'm standing on right now that was sitting, minding in its own business, eroding away, nothing washing down on top of it. It was eroding away. And yet the mountains are right there. Out of the blue, suddenly something changed or shifted, or an earthquake or something. And then suddenly all this material came down and covered the landscape. See what I'm saying? So that material there, the overthrust, stopped about 90 million years ago. It was finished. It was there, just like you see it. It was finished. And so you're talking 70 million years went by, and yet that material was not getting washed down upon this landscape. And then out of the blue, suddenly it blasts down and it covers everything for thousands of square miles. You see what I'm saying? Now, that right there, that's Rainbow Gardens tilted up. And a lot of the stuff is. There it is there. It's tilted up. So it's here right now where I'm standing, but it's below my feet because it's not tilted up. So what made that material suddenly wash down out of the middle of no place when it had been sitting for 70 million years? I don't know. I can't get anybody else excited about it. I'm coming up on the van over on the left. You can't see it. It's hidden. But anyway, there's horsespring formation sitting on top of the Moenkopi upon which it washed. Okay, there's the Rainbow Gardens sitting on top of the Moenkopi upon which it washed. There's more horsespring, all that stuff up there, sitting on top of the Moenkopi upon which it washed. So why is not this layer of Rainbow Gardens member on the bottom there? In other words, interfacing with the Moenkopi. Okay, I believe I know why. Because further on up, this would have been a slope. The Rainbow Garden conglomerate covered everything. It covered everything. Okay, but as you get further and further this way, it started to separate out where there were specific channels where the outwash was blasting. Therefore, like right there would have been a channel. This would have been a higher spot, and then that material was deposited later after the rainbow gardens had finished. That first layer had finished. I see no other explanation.